There it goes. There's the transition I was looking for. So it is Wednesday. I had to actually think about that. July 2nd. So we're into the second half of the year, 2025, here on the Dev Talk Show. And I am here on, I wonder, let's see which way, if I'm going to get the pointing. I probably won't get the pointing right, but I'm going to try. If I point, I did it. Look at that. If I point to my right, but on the screen, it looks like my left.
Yeah.
It's my co-host, Rich Ross. How are you doing this morning?
Doing well, Chris. How are you? It's so much harder to do this when you're not in the studio looking at each other. So, sorry.
Yeah.
How are you doing?
Doing good. And I always forget. And I think some of it maybe, I don't remember if I'm mirroring my video or not. I might be, I don't know, or if it, and so I always remember, do I have to look, what do I have to do? And everything's opposite. And some people get really good at it though.
So I just picked up this trick so I am fortunate, or it shows up on camera, I have the mic stand. So I just look at the mic stand and like, okay, which is the opposite? It's that way.
Yeah. Maybe I'm a little slow on that one. Because I had to really stop and think. But in any case, here we are.
Yeah.
We are very close. It's definitely summer, no doubt about it. And we are in the second half of the year, which is crazy, which means we are getting closer to things like .NET Conf and the release of .NET 10, which fun. It's fun how that's become an annual event now. Is okay, it's the fall, new .NET, what's going on? And I'm looking forward to some topics that have been talked about there, especially because I think they may hold near and dear to some of the things that we talk about on this channel. So in any case, just checking to make sure we seem to be live on YouTube, Twitch, and possibly my personal LinkedIn, except that I don't have it. It's not viewable for me from here. So
since you're talking about events, .NET Conf's a few months off.
Yep.
A couple things to talk about, and maybe I can jump in and share this real quick. No, present. Share screen. And let's do this. Give me a window. My dev box. Go. Nice. And so this is something that we might touch on a little bit today. But for those who don't know, MCP, or Model Context Protocol, is like huge in the LLM agent space. So using not so much building chatbots, but more building agents and having agents be aware of what tools or prompts or resources they can use to bring into the conversation. That's what this Model Context Protocol delivers. And if it's new to you, and there's a good possibility that it is, there's a whole bunch of things that have happened because this world has completely changed probably since February. So there's a great opportunity for you to go and check this out. So this is MCP Dev Days, and it's actually a 2-day event where they're going to do, get you the tools and get you the access, and actually on day 2, get you building your own MCP server with confidence, and how you should think about prompts and resources and security and all of those things, because those are important considerations when we start building out anything, especially in this space where it has the potential to launch its own tool set, as we'll see, hopefully, as we do this here. So definitely check it out. It's register. Is there registration for it? Now. Oh, there we go. Is that? Yep. So you can register for the series right here. So definitely want to check that out, as if that's of interest to you. I know pretty much personally every conversation I've been having with customers has involved this to some extent. So it is definitely of interest.
Yeah, I have. I think I've said this on the show a couple times, or I've said it to you outside of it, that the Model Context Protocol was the first thing that kind of, I think, the light bulb started to turn on about what goes beyond chat. And I guess one way to think of it, maybe I'm wrong, is that I feel like one of the things Model Context Protocol enables for your particular, it could be an app, it could be processes, is that it's like it gives the AI eyes, ears, and hands to act in ways that previously was mostly just about gathering information, synthesizing it, and giving you a response. We've even seen it when we've been working with it ourselves, is that the implementation can do more and even say like, well, why don't I just go do that for you? You know, why don't I go and create GitHub issues or update your code, things like that. So
exactly. And that's, the world we've been living in here with vibe coding, the world that you're probably going to be living in as we think of applications and including AI in your applications. And then since we're .NET developers here, showing that there is actually a full-on SDK for you to go ahead and start building out your own model context protocol server, and a bit of a walk through, I think it's in the quick starts. Build a minimal MCP server, and then since you need something to talk to that server, you can't just make REST calls to it. There's actually a client that you would go ahead and instantiate as well. So all the tools and things to kind of get you thinking about getting started with that. But yeah.
Speaking of MCPs, before we get started on code, because it's going to be kind of we've got some things we're going to try to do today, and I think we'll be successful. Is let me present real quick.
Cool.
There is a new MCP here that I just learned about, and we'll have to put this link in the chat. It's AKAMS learn_MCP_launch. So let me add that.
Are you typing it? I was going to do that, or you're going to go ahead and show it if you want.
If I already went ahead and did it. So if I hit enter on that, we get redirected to this GitHub repo, Microsoft Learn Docs MCP server. And as they say here, a cloud-hosted service that enables MCP hosts like GitHub Copilot, Cursor, and I guess others, to search and retrieve accurate information directly from the official docs.
Nice.
So that sounded really useful for what we do on stream. So I went ahead and dropped in and added the configuration to VS Code, which I haven't added it to Visual Studio, and there are instructions for that, which I haven't done yet. But I just did this kind of yesterday, and it's that weird feeling of like, okay, now I know it has access to new data, I guess. But I'm not 100% sure. Like, was it better before? I don't know, because you don't know, right? It's just answering questions, but it's really neat. And so I just figured that might be helpful to people. I imagine I wouldn't be surprised if almost all of our viewers might not want to consider adding this MCP server to the list and just having it available, right?
Yeah. And what it solves is actually something, I don't know if I mentioned here, but it did prior to us doing the Philly.net bootcamp, Copilot bootcamp that we did a couple weeks ago. I did one with some of the GitHub folks, and the questions we got from the audience was, well, how do I point it to documentation so that it can ground itself in its response to say, well, based on what I read about this Azure service, or what I read about this .NET capability in Blazor, help me, provide what might be an appropriate code example. And an MCP server is one way that you could do that and kind of get that context grounded around what it is that that Copilot is making its response against.
Yeah, so I've gone ahead and added it here. I think that's all I have to do. It's one of those things where you running. It says it's running. It's one of those things where you say, okay. Like,
now, you might have to do one more thing. So if you open up the Copilot window, and if you do so it only runs in agent mode. So we've got to move to agent. And then if you see the kind of the tools, the little wrench and the screwdriver,
that's
your MCP tools. So you have 83 of them selected.
Okay.
And there's your docs one, right? And then really it's just one tool that it can call, the docs search.
Yep.
As
Yep.
you see some of the other ones, like we've got Mermaid in there, there are many
Yeah.
tools that can be called. And you can filter those. You can uncheck those boxes and only expose the ones that you want to.
Yep. It seems like I didn't even realize this, that some of the extensions I have installed clearly are linking in, right? Like the Mermaid chart extension. So,
Yep.
all right.
Last thing on that is you had 83 there. There's a limit of, I think it's 125. When you hit that limit, Copilot basically won't work. It'll say, sorry, I can't process this. And you have to basically get your number of tools selected to under 125.
Oh, okay. All right. I had no idea.
That's a common limitation.
Yeah. Look at some of these. I didn't even realize these extensions. Huh. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. I guess it makes sense because when you're using Copilot and it says things like, hey, let me review your database. Well, it's going to use that. I just happen to be scrolling by the SQL Server extension, and apparently it's got a few features in there that I wasn't even aware were there. Yeah. So let's talk real quick about the app. Let me double check where we are. We should be at gosh, we've got kind of there's a lot going on here, but we have a tag at post show for June 27th, 250627. And so I think I added it after the fact.
Thank you. I don't remember doing that.
And then we have, that's where main is right now. And that's even where, is it where main is? Let's see, where's origin main on here? That's odd that I don't know where origin main is. Oh, it's because I have it. Sorry, I must have. Let's make it visible again. Yes. So what I did is for whatever reason, who knows what I was thinking at the time, but I made origin main invisible in my commit graph, and so I'm all synced up. I'm synced up to that, and that's where, just so for reference, that's where we're at. I try to get all this in the show notes afterwards. And then let's see where we end up. So what we have now is we have an application here that I think I had to build it because I was probably doing something else. Is we have an application here. There's the .NET Aspire. Here comes the app. It's coming up, and we've got some things. We can show some meetings. And we still have the counter still sitting here. And we still have the weather app, but the weather app's been sort of disconnected in a way because we deleted the weather API. So it blows up. There are some pull requests sitting out there. Go ahead. You were going to say something.
Yeah, sorry. I remember there's a local commit where I got rid of that because it was looking at my code to make a suggestion. So yeah, it'll get in there.
We have some pull requests, so let's go through those real quick. Some things that we've actually done on the show, so but they just haven't gotten in. So remove remnants of the sample weather API.
Oh, cool.
And let's see. After I put in my very helpful comment, I asked Copilot to provide an overview, and I really liked that because in some ways I didn't have to write it, and I could just review it and say like, yeah, that's pretty much it. That's pretty much exactly it. And so it's already in my very, very messy commit graph here. Or at least I thought it was. Let's see.
Remove original.
That's a local branch. This is the one here. So it's all the way down here. So we're gonna have a little fun with Git here. This is probably something common that everybody's doing at work, which it's fine. Is that you can see that this commit is actually it's based on a fairly old commit at this point, one from way back in early June. Now I think this is generally harmless. We're making a change to program CS, as you can see down there at the bottom, and we're making a change to meeting service. But I don't believe these are going to like bump into other changes we've made. So this is just going to be fine. And what's going to happen is we're going to end up with a merge commit because it's going to say, okay, well, in order for me to make this an ancestor of the latest, I'm going to need another commit here where both main is the ancestor and the pull request that you're proposing, that commit is an ancestor. And so we're going to see this join up here.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the reason I'm saying this, and we may have to figure out how to do this on a show or something, is I'm going to go ahead and let it say create a merge commit. And let's merge it. Like I said, I don't expect any kind of issue here. What's the bane of everyone's existence at work? And it's merge conflict, right? Like that's what it is. So yep. I'm all about trying to both prevent them, but also learn how to not be afraid of them.
Okay.
So now that I've done that, let's take a look at how that modified the graph. Okay, way back here, remove sample weather API. This is still here. But notice, just like I predicted, remember how a second ago this was the end of the road for that branch?
Mm-hmm.
And it still is. The branch is still here. The branch is still pointing to this commit because all a branch is a pointer. So the branch is still pointing to that commit. But in order to bring it into main, what it did is it said, okay, well, main is here. And that's on a different path. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make this brand new net new commit. And it's going to, one of its ancestors will be this. The other ancestor will be this. We will be able to track the changes, which actually, interestingly enough, the changes. Oh, wait, that's not the one that I merged. Was it? What did I merge? I may have picked the wrong one to merge. I think sample. You know what? Let's go look. Yes, sample weather API. So when I was talking earlier, I was talking about this one. We're going to get to this one, but this is the one we merged. So program CS, nav menu razor, and weather razor were changed, but those changes basically were merged if there was any difference. If someone else had been working in these things, those changes had to be merged with whatever's happened to main since. And so I don't know that we've done enough for it to really be, in fact, it wasn't impactful at all, right? Just weather forecast. It was no problem. It was no problem to do this. Merge conflicts happen when two or more people working on the code end up in the same spot, essentially, and Git can't figure out a safe way. And Git is by default, is very safe about this. It can't figure out a safe way to bring it together that's probably going to work. And so it just says, I'm sorry, you got to figure it out. And so I have techniques that I use to try to prevent that. That tends to be where I rebase onto main, and I do it early and often throughout my development. And we're not going to discuss any more on that today, but it's something I like to do. I would love to know what your strategies are if you're watching in the comments about how you prevent the massive merge conflict where you say, oh, I've got 30 files conflicted and it's like a month's worth of my work. And what am I going to do? I try very hard to not let myself get in that situation. So that one's done. Pull request, merge, closed. We can delete the branch. Let's get through the other ones a little bit more quickly than me blathering about them. This one is remove the original meeting service. People might remember that we originally implemented a meeting service and then we switched to we're using an interface, and we found, oh gosh, this meeting service isn't even being used anymore by the Blazor app. So that's all this gets rid of. This just gets rid of that. Now that we have the iMeeting service interface, that the iMeeting service interface is implemented with a typed HTTP client. So we didn't need this anymore. So I'm going to merge this. And we'll delete that branch. And then we've got one more. We bumped Aspire to 931. Yeah. But I think we forgot something. Show.
What's that?
And I'll show you what it is that when we bumped the these different package references, that's all we had to do too. We didn't bump the SDK. So we left that at 9.2. So that's all that this does. It doesn't do anything else.
Okay.
Yeah. But I'm trying to stick to pretending like we have this rather large team and that just committing to main could be problematic. Just because it can be surprising to people. That's the only reason why. I have to do a fetch because I do not auto fetch in most of my Git IDEs. So after I do this fetch, it should, it kind of goes crazy here, but it did it, where we now see multiple lines of code coming up and getting a merge commit created for it to bring that in, to bring that in, and to bring that in. So now the next time, unless Rich is not pointing at main, unless you're not pointing at main right now, or what was previously origin main, then you'll have some merging and figuring to do, where in this case, since I haven't, when I pull main up, this is just going to be a simple fast forward. Just pick this up and fast forward it to here. So
yeah, I mean, I'm sure there are some of those files that you changed are some files that I changed potentially. So I will have to do a little bit of work.
Could always create a new branch, rebase it on main, stuff like that. I mean, we'll see. So anyways, let's say git pull, and I tend to like to say fast forward only so that I'm not surprised. Oh, really? Maybe I need to fetch them. Well, I already did fetch them. I'm surprised that origin main is here. I said fetch, and it did not move me up. Is it because, do I have to do this? Is that why? Says it's up to date. That's, oh, I see why. I see why. I'm on the wrong. I'm tracking. My main is tracking a different branch. So, okay. Setting the tracking branch. Believe it or not, I've forgotten how to do that. So, all right. So here we go. So if I say git branch, and I don't think I have to do, so the long form of this command is that set upstream to.
Okay.
But I think the short form is this. I think.
-u, that's what I, yep.
And I can say origin main. And so now what I'm saying is my main branch should be tracking origins main. As you can see, I forked the repository to work privately, and I even changed the tracking branch. Now that I changed the tracking branch,
you're behind by 6 commits.
Yes, you got it. Here is Oh My Posh being very helpful and saying, oh, you're behind. So now I can pull fast forward on. I imagine there are many people watching this show right now who have never done anything like what I just did, and maybe never realized you could do anything like what I just did, and maybe now are ultimately confused. But I hope what at least opens most everybody's eyes to is that you're in control with Git. I want to fork the repository and then have my have tracking branches think about that, so I can work separately for a little while. That's fine. I could always reset my local repository to whatever was before, and my changes are safely saved. But you kind of got to play with it to really get used to it. Otherwise, it just feels in the moment. It feels like it can feel like maybe it's in your way.
Yeah.
So I can appreciate that. So now that I clicked back in Visual Studio, that little bit of weather forecast code disappeared. I think if I run the app now, we're going to see the whole weather thing is gone. We still have the counter sitting around there. We're going to want to deal with that at some point. But, oh, wait, sorry. I always bring over the Aspire dashboard, which is fine. Like, Aspire's cool. But this is what I really wanted. So weather is gone. Ta-da, all gone.
Nice.
Now, what we're going to implement today, we got about a half an hour. I think we should be able to get through it. Is we are on, so here's something for everybody watching. We are on the road to authentication and authorization. It's coming. It's got to happen soon. Where
down the track.
Yep, we're getting to the point now where we need to be able to start to put these things behind their correct roles, or however we're going to do the authorization. Is it going to be role based? Are we going to pick it based on claims? Where is it going to come from? That's okay. The app doesn't care about that. It's going to care about the authorization, like who's allowed to do this stuff, who's allowed to add meetings, who's allowed to cancel them, who's allowed to modify them. Right now, we've been able to kind of get away with just like, who cares? We're building the functionality. But in order to get there, I think it'll be helpful to add just a touch more functionality. And I only say this just because of our audience. If this was an app you and I were working on alone, I might have insisted that we get the authentication and authorization in first. But I don't know how exciting that would be because it doesn't show any, we're not going to be able to show anything.
Yeah.
So
it's all this code that doesn't,
it doesn't do anything. So we'll be able to do this now where somebody who is authenticated, who is not authenticated, won't have the add new meeting functionality. They won't be able to edit.
Okay.
But then when you or I actually go ahead and commit and log in, I don't want to use that term. Like when we go ahead and log in, we authorize ourselves or authenticate ourselves, then we would be authorized to both see that button, use that button. The API would also follow along. So right now, the API, if you know the API, you can add whatever meetings you want.
Yeah.
Right? So what do you need the app for? So let's implement something where, as you can see right now, there's a bunch of meetings in here.
Wow, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. I want you to know I did not sit here and use the app to enter them. I got a little tired of every time I started this app up of saying, oh, I got to add a few meetings so that I can work on functionality.
Yeah.
So I said, I want to build, I just want to build real quick a data seed, some data seed functionality.
Okay.
And I think we can do this fairly quickly and perhaps use some different tools to do so. So my thinking is, let's close out. Another thing we have to look at is, remember this orbital data class? I'm not convinced that it has a purpose anymore, but we'll talk about that another time. There's no reason to look at it right now. Yeah, so this is our program CS for the API. So there's our API. And in here, I was thinking this. If we're in development and development only, can we take a quick detour and see if our meeting repository has meetings?
Okay. And
if it doesn't, let's drop some in there that just to get the ball rolling purely from the standpoint. This is not for unit integrated or unit testing. This is in the API's program CS, but it's purely like a convenience method to say, look, you're working on the code. Here's some samples data to get started.
It's reasonable, right? You want to have that good new experience for somebody who's just joining our project.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. And maybe we have to iterate on this a little bit, but part of me is thinking I don't want it to get in the way, and I don't want it to get in the way of like functionality that we'd have to turn on and turn off and be like really crazy about. So what I thought I would do is say I just really want like a method here. Okay. Frankly, if I could just like sort of I'll use pseudocode to demonstrate kind of what I'm thinking. Is I really just kind of want a method here that's like seed meetings, and I mean that's fine. And maybe it would have to. I love how it's trying to maybe in order to seed the meetings, we pass in the configured repository.
Sure.
So right now that's a Cosmos meeting repository, but it could be whatever. So the question is, where should I do that? I don't know that I want to do it right here in Program CS.
No. I mean, we have a data project.
We do, but I was starting to think, like, do I need to involve other projects? I wasn't sure for just this simple method that says, hey, take this meeting repository and add. I mean, maybe.
I mean, is it possible that you might, not be using the web component and just using the API and doing work against the API and still want to see the database?
Well, so I'll tell you, my first implementation of this was to add the class here in the API.
Okay.
And again, I mean, I definitely, this is why we get together, is we can talk this through. So I created like this. Oh, I'm not asking you to do stuff. Don't don't pull. So unfortunately, it's like, hey, why don't I just pull from what I see in source control? Because I worked through a sample of this,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't want any
Down
of
the
it.
bottom, there's a keep undo. Bottom of the, there you go.
I don't need any of this. I just wanted, I mean, I do, but I also
Not
don't.
now.
Yeah. So I said, like, what if, and in fact, I don't even really care if I name everything exactly the same.
Right.
So I started by saying, but man, look at it. Copilot's like, I feel like I know what you're trying to do. And I wonder how it knows. So I said, like, okay, what if I just have a method? And then I realized very quickly that I needed that method to be async and I wanted it to be static. And why did I need to be async? Because I'm going to go make a call out to the database. And it's funny how it's just saying, like, why don't I just, it's not wrong. I called it seed meetings async, right?
Yeah.
And here it's just trying to, so this is all nonsense. I don't need this.
Yeah.
So
Closing brace.
all right.
There you go.
So I said, okay, what if I have the ability to call out to a seed meetings async?
Okay.
So then I said, okay, now obviously I have to await, I have to do something here. And I could say, okay, I have a repository. So if the repository, I guess this is a good point. If the repository is null, then let's just forget about it. Like, this isn't going to help us. But let's see. If I ask the repository, what's our, oh, I like it. I'm getting help here. Yeah, if I ask it to list the meetings.
Yeah.
And if I list them, I'm going to need to store them somewhere, or at least hang on to them. So meetings, I guess, is fine.
Sure.
And we could say, and I think it's probably just going to help me, right? If there are any meetings in the database is already seeded, sure, great. And then watch this. It's just gonna go for it. I don't know how about, I don't necessarily need it to be this complicated. What if I just say, let's say var meeting, var meeting equals new meeting, and we can fill it in. Let's see. The ID is a GUID. That's true. Okay. I'll go with the title. This is fine. We do want to start time. Let's have it end an hour later. That's okay. Like, I don't really mind any of these suggestions. I'm not going to worry about participants, but let's put keywords in there. I think that would be nice.
Yeah.
And what other things do we have? I think, are we using event status yet?
We don't have event status wired up yet. It's a field, but it's not. It's
not really doing anything. Okay.
Yeah.
Location we have in there.
Yes, that we do have.
Okay. All right. So I'm okay with this, actually. I'm okay.
Cool.
And then we'll say await and create the meeting.
Love it. And then we need a closing bracket.
Yep. Okay. All right. That's good. Now, there's some issues, though. I can't just run this as is, because I made a decision as I was working here that I want to inject the repository, and I obviously I'm not calling it yet. So if I try to call this, it's going to be like, dude, what are you doing? Well, first of all, I decided to go with a static method. So that means we're going to need this data meter.seed data seeder .seed meetings. What did it do for namespace? I wonder. The problem is that this now has to also be static class. Okay, because it's just a one-time thing. So I'm surprised. What are you not happy about?
Yeah, using orbital API.
Okay.
It's there.
That's fine.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
I wonder what namespace we're in at the moment. So I'm not going to worry about it. So data seeder doesn't contain, what did I call it? I called it, it's C meetings async. That's right. Because it turned out to be async. And that means we can await this. Mm-hmm. And, repository, what does that mean? So this is a little thing that we have added the desired meeting repository implementation as a scoped service. But just because we've added it, I can't instantiate that like just out of thin air here, because the dependency injection framework that's built into ASP.NET Core kind of all gets built. It's getting built, and I know I'm being a little hand wavy with this. It's getting built and sort of ready for use as the app is being run and this pipeline is being built. I'm too early in the process, so this may be new to people, and I'll be frank, I had to go look up how to do this because I'd forgotten. Is I need to basically ask the same exact system, and I don't know that it needs to be this complicated. I need to ask it, can you go create a scoped service for iMeeting repository? Now, this is what Copilot did, but I wrapped it in a using.
Okay.
And why don't we use the new using? Let's use the new using, where we'll see what we think about it. And then that way, this can just be scope.serviceprovider, and then you would await it. And then I believe the new using statement-based using, I know we're all used to putting it in a block, right?
Yeah, with the curly braces around it.
And there's nothing wrong with that.
Okay.
But this is I forget how many C# versions ago we were given the ability to do this, and the compiler infers when the scope ends. I'm going to try it. I'm not asking anybody who's maybe a C# veteran to like it. In fact, let us know what you think about it. Maybe you hate this thing, but I figured this is the perfect chance to try it. So I think we're good. Oh, I have a syntax error, and it's here. I didn't have a...
Missed that one, sorry.
Yep. So that all worked. Now, when I run it, remember there's data in here. So I don't know that I'm going to get this breakpoint in quickly enough. I did get the breakpoint in quickly enough. Database already seeded, so it's going to do nothing.
Yeah, after all that.
Okay. Yeah, after all that work. So that was exciting, right? So why don't I open the Data Explorer for our preview emulator, and we can see that these meetings are in here. And I'm just going to select them all and delete them. And so now, if I do that and I restart the app, and hopefully the little restart button did what I wanted it to do. I think it did what I wanted it to do, but I'm actually not sure.
I think you wanted the other restart.
Yeah, I think you're right. I wanted
that one. Oh no, that's hot reload, the left one.
Yeah, I did hot reload. Okay, so restart was a little bit more to the right. Okay, so this time through, I'm hitting a different breakpoint. The one that says, yep, we got by here. So let's continue. And our app is loading up. And I can go to the meetings, and there it is. There's that project kickoff meeting.
Nice.
So I did all this, and then I started dreaming about, well, I kind of wish it did this. I kind of wish it did that.
Okay.
And that's when I did probably what other people might have done earlier, is I said, let's ask Copilot to help. Here, I don't want this anymore. Can I just delete that?
Oh, you don't want the whole thread? Okay.
I don't want the thread. The problem is okay, whatever. Okay, so I said, why don't I ask Copilot to help? Now, let's think about this, and let's say I have so I wonder if I can zoom in down here and type. I think I can. I have a data seeder class with a seeding method. It works, but I would like for let's say this, but when it generates new meetings, I would like for it to generate 10 meetings. I want the meetings to be about .NET related topics. So include a generic description and some keywords for the meetup, for the meeting. Include a location that you make up for all of them. And each meeting should take place on the third Wednesday of the month at 6 p.m. and they should last for 2 hours. Have the method create the meetings in the past for the, how about this, for the past 10 months, so that a user could use the app to schedule this month's meeting. This will allow someone who clones the repository to be able to use the app quickly in their development environment without having to make up meetings. Okay.
Cool.
So hopefully this doesn't take too long. But as you can see, like, I kind of went crazy with the prompt and said, like, well, why don't I, instead of it just being like garbage, the data is not going to be like the greatest data in the world, but it at least makes some logical sense. Then maybe the person working on it just is like, oh, okay. So let's see what it says. It says, I'll help you modify the data seeder file to generate 10 meetings about .NET topics that occur on the third Wednesday of each month, lasting 2 hours. Let me get, and so I guess it's reading all these different things. Okay.
It's actually reading the meeting so that it understands how that one is.
Yep. It's even looking at the Razor template there. Looked at the unit tests. Checked out reading CS.
And now we're waiting.
Yeah, I guess this is it. I guess this is this like, okay, I'm ready to go. So I chose, and I didn't really think very hard about this. As you can see at the bottom, I have Claude Sonnet 3.7 as the active agent.
Okay.
The different agents, some of them are premium or limited tokens, or I mean, if you don't know, then I'm sorry for putting you on the spot. But,
no, that's okay. So I don't want to do it here, but if in Visual Studio Code, if you do the model and you basically open the model up, you will see different scales next to them.
So that's here.
Yeah. So if you click the GPT-4 one.
Okay.
And so the first two are included, and then the premium models, there's a rate charge against those. And I would check the documentation for what that really means for your particular GitHub Copilot license, because that's what it's going to be based off of. But essentially what happens is, the mini 04 mini preview has less of a multiplier than Gemini, Sonnet, those kind of things. So,
okay.
And then the other ones are kind of included.
I suppose something to keep in mind, because it seems like I think I'm getting some limited number of tokens I don't know what those
Mhm.
are.
Yeah.
I wonder if we need like a little jackpot kind of interface where they roll down as they're being used. Maybe somebody could build an extension for that. So let's see what happened here. Somebody compiled the project. So let's see what we did. Okay, here we go. So it made some changes, and then it, I think, ran a build.
Okay.
Okay, and then he said, "Okay, I've updated it. I added 10 unique meetings, scheduled on the Thursday of the month. The meetings span the past 10 months. Each meeting has a descriptive title, consistent location." And then he said, "Okay, I populated some other properties, and the seeder will only create these meetings if the database is empty." And then it pats itself on the back, provides a good set of sample data. So let's see what it did here. Define the meeting location, set the current date to now. And then, yeah, just generated some meetings for me, which I didn't really feel like doing. And then it dropped into a for loop and added it to, I mean, it just, didn't need this one anymore.
Yep.
Created the meeting from those things and then added it to the repository. So, and then here was the code that I didn't feel like writing, right? Was let's go back 9 months, figure out the third Wednesday, set the meeting time, make it 2 hours. I don't know. Let's say keep. And now it's not going to do anything until I get rid of the original meetings, right?
That's true. You got to get rid of the one that we just created.
Yep. So we got our data explorer, and I was just being a little lazy and saying, like, why don't I have .NET Aspire bring up the dashboard and I'll delete it that way. I suppose I could certainly have like VS Code running connected to the DB and do it that way. I could have done that.
Truthful.
But let's do it this way. And in fact, can't I? Can I stop and start the resource here, and would it do what I want it to do?
I mean, it looks like it's. That's a good question.
Yeah, I mean, I just stopped it and I started it, and I'm not even going to bother doing anything else other than clicking meetings, and there they are.
Huh.
So when I restarted the web API, that code kicked in, and here I have, yeah, this is just dummy data.
Yeah.
You saw what was happening every time I was coming in here and saying, okay, let me add a meeting, and now the meetings are here. So I could very quickly pull the app from source. As a developer, I could just get some stuff dropped in there. There's nothing special about them. Like, if I wanted to be like really crazy about it, although maybe it's not that helpful, is it could go generate this from AI as well, but that's fine. It's in there.
Mm-hmm.
And my take was, okay, I have something that's just a little bit nice of a quality of life solution. And I sort of got the ball rolling. And then once I got the ball rolling, I said, here, why don't you just finish it off? So,
yeah, that's cool. Nicely done.
So I think we got a great answer here that says, I think VS 2022 has a dropdown that shows Copilot consumption. Let's see if I click or, use Control Q or whatever and say feature search, and I type Copilot. I just wondered. Yeah, I didn't type enough, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Oh, wait. See your Copilot usage, maybe? Let me click there.
Okay.
Hey, look at that.
You're on the pro plan.
Yeah.
And
I'm 72% of the way through.
Yep.
So that tells me. Okay, cool. Well, thank you. Yeah, that's from Arts Plunge. And so I'm glad that you even getting me to look I really appreciate. And it's a Copilot usage is sitting under the what's new category. I find that's kind of interesting. I don't know if it's anywhere else. Consumptions panel to easily track your usage. Oh, access it by clicking the Copilot badge in the top right corner of your IDE and selecting Copilot consumption. So Copilot badge, Copilot consumptions. There we go. There we go. All right. That's awesome. I'm glad that we learned that right from the audience, which is what it's all about. So
exactly.
So hopefully that was helpful. Perhaps we went over some things that people do or don't do every day. But like I said, I don't know if it's the next show, but I think we're very close to saying, let's add authentication and authorization to this. And really start pushing the features, because we actually don't, the data models coming in. We need to add some front end features to allow administrators to add these meetings, to edit them, to publish them, cancel them, I guess.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And all that comes down to something that was a branch you showed that maybe we can do on Friday is about the metadata, right? So all of, we're focused on the data model, but there are certain fields that we have, like what's the scheduling status of this event, and what's the potentially things like location, right? Could have choices instead of having to all be text boxes. So there's a branch where basically started to build out the metadata. And we're kind of to the point where we're using the similar repository pattern, services pattern that Chris did for the meetings, and just needs to kind of get wired up in there. So I think maybe we can finish the wiring and start to put a couple of fields on the forms and see what happens. Ultimately, that's also going to rely on your the authentication stuff we want to do, because we only want to give that modifying access to someone who's an admin. So
we got a good question here. Is Azure CosmosDB a reasonable alternative to SQL Server in a production app? I'm looking for less expensive.
I think so. I would come at that question from not so much looking at it from a cost perspective, but coming at it, what's the data you're trying to store? Excuse me. Because Cosmos DB is a NoSQL structured database, whereas a SQL server is going to require some kind of a schema associated with it. So if your data is in a format where you don't necessarily need to have, or your schema is going to change, or you need to have some kind of an environment where you're really focused on the read-write capabilities and being able to have that data persist across multiple regions in Azure, then that might push you more towards a CosmosDB versus something like a SQL Server, which, as developers, we've kind of all, certainly us older developers have been playing around with SQL for a while.
We're very used to SQL and relational data, right?
That's kind of how we think for the most part, right?
Yeah, I've actually struggled with trying to unthink because it's very easy to just drop into that relational model and want to drop everything. So now, but here's the thing, though. You were mentioning about CosmosDB. It has multiple APIs. Like they even say here, fully managed, distributed, NoSQL relational and vector database. So if you're coming in saying, I need a relational database, there is Azure Cosmos for PostgreSQL. And then if you want, we're using Azure Cosmos DB for NoSQL. This is the model we're using right here.
Yeah. I've not used the Postgres.
Yeah. I haven't either.
So yeah.
But the point is that, because here's the thing about Azure Cosmos DB that I hope I'm saying this right, that I think makes it why it can be difficult for people to understand, should I choose this, is because it solves multiple problems at once. Instead of, if we just talk about SQL Server versus Mongo or any NoSQL, for example, we're only talking about the data when we have that conversation. is, are we going to have relational data, document data, or any vector data? So we're choosing a database based on data. But when you make the choice to go with CosmosDB, you're actually making two choices. You are choosing a data representation, whether you decide to say, I want the table API, the MongoDB API, the PostgreSQL API, but you are also choosing a fully managed distributed platform.
Right. That good
where
point.
I could start SQL Server under my desk here, and there I'm in SQL Server. Or I could use a fully managed distributed version of SQL Server, perhaps hosted in Azure or wherever, your data center.
Yeah.
Right. So I think that pivot is what makes it confusing, because you're actually making two choices at once. You're not making one. And I think as long as you understand that, then you can say, okay, let's go look at the pricing. Let's compare it to what might I do in the data center, and then find out things about like what kind of SLA do you need, and can you provide that SLA yourself, or no, we could never provide that SLA. Okay.
Right. Yeah. And I think the other thing to consider, to keep in mind as you look at CosmosDB is the partitioning, right? And understand what it means when you define your partition, because that's where you can, going cross partitions and doing large queries across partitions can lead to some of those higher costs when it comes to that service. So, go through the docs. There's certainly there's many pages of documents when it comes to partition to go through and understand that choice.
Yeah, absolutely. So, like that's just my take on it. It's a multifaceted answer, which I think is why it can be confusing. So, well, should I use this?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, maybe one of the angles you're attacking, definitely just bam, right? But if you say like, well, I like the idea I like how it functions. I just wish it was relational. Okay. All right. Like that's here.
Yeah.
I'll admit I am not as familiar with PostgreSQL as I would like to be. So perhaps maybe maybe in the future. I mean, and this is a good point too, right?
Right.
Yeah, in the early stages of pricing out Azure features, if I understand the cost calculator, SQL Server seems pricey for a simple DB. Again, I don't know that we have. It'd be something interesting to talk about. I feel like there are some very low cost SQL Server options, but then they might be limited to like 5 gigs or something, which maybe is a lot in some cases. In other cases, like, oh, I'll fill that up in 10 seconds.
Right. So the older DTO, DTO database, or it's DBO. I think it's database. I think it's DTO. They were, how many DTO units you had. So that was like the way we originally did SQL Server. So, but that's kind of fallen off with some of the more production size, and those are more expensive. So if you're just doing development, there are certainly ways that you can very easily get a SQL Server, like you said, for 5 gigs that gives you that easy access to do that. And I think, look at if you really want to have a relational SQL database, then there are other options too, right? You could run Postgres. You could run Postgres in a container and not even have to worry about that kind of, paying for a service that does that. If you're in the early stages of a project and you're just trying to see, hey, is there there and what I'm trying to build out. So there's definitely other options that can be less expensive than, running what might be the production SKU of, or, at least the higher end SKU of SQL.
Yeah, I mean, that's true, right? Like running. So let me just say, I haven't personally looked into exactly measuring this myself, but what I keep hearing is that a PostgreSQL container is very light, even compared to the SQL Server for Linux container. So there's a lot of people who just start by using that because it'll all work on your laptop. So, but I definitely understand. Like, I have a lifetime heritage with SQL Server, so it's easy for me to get going.
Yeah, and yeah, it's kind of the thing to fall back to, and we've struggled a little bit. Not struggled, but there's some things that we've had to learn and understand when we do some of the Cosmos stuff, because it's not something we're always used to. Let me just show this real quick because I think it's kind of important. I'm going to bring my screen up.
Yeah, like I was just going to say that if you haven't followed along from the beginning, some of the choices we made were intentional to say, well, let's take this little project as an opportunity to try some things, because I just don't get a chance to. So
yeah.
And it's one thing to play around with NoSQL, like, oh yeah, I played around, I did the tutorial, I did the quick start, but now it's like, okay, we're going to solve a real problem. And whenever you say you're going to solve a real problem, no matter how small the problem is, that's when you find out how to actually use something.
Right. So no, thank you. Don't need help. So if you go to, I think there's a short URL I put in here for azure.com/free, and then in here is a section called free services. And if we look at things that are, there's two categories of that. If you're just signing up new to Azure, there are things that are free for the first 12 months, and then there are things that are always free. So if we look here, here's an Azure SQL database that is always free, and if we you can get up to, according to the documentation here, you can get up to 10 databases with 100,000 vCore seconds of serverless tier at 32 gigs each. So there's a lot to unpack inside of that statement, but the point is, if you're testing something out, check the free stuff and see if that's something that you want to get, if that you can take advantage of in the subscription that you have. So we can see all the free services if we go here. Coming down to Azure. So even Cosmos has some free components that you can take advantage of in that space. So point of it is they're probably, lesser scale or things of that nature, but it's a way for you to do what you're doing. You're in the early stages of a project. What's the right database that I want to use for, or the right data store that I want to use for this? So there's Cosmos, there's MySQL, there's Postgres. All of those have various capabilities of being free. And then I know SQL's down here as well. Azure SQL. That's the managed instance, which I would not. There should be just SQL Server. Yeah. Yeah, SQL database. So that first one, that was Azure SQL managed instance. So that it gives you a little more access to some of the services in Azure SQL in the SQL database, but it's also managed. It's a managed service that Azure manages, to worry about updates and things like that. That one has a 12-month window. This one has an always window. So sorry, just a lot of this is digging in and getting in some of the awareness of what might be, what's available, and just seeing what works for what you're working on.
Right. All right.
Yeah, and feel free to drop a link in the comments afterwards. We can always bring it up on the next show, because that is something we've done before as well.
Yeah.
So happy to see you're interested in digging into Azure and building out your own project, which is the important part.
Yeah, thanks for asking that question, and thanks for joining us live, which is great. And whether you're joining us live or maybe watching in the future, if you have any questions or even comments on what we did today, if there's practices you like and things that work for you, I think that's the whole point of the show, is we're getting together and having a conversation. I'm not trying to prescribe that every way I do things is the right way, and that's not the point of it. Is to say, hey, we solved a problem. What do you think? And a lot of times we learn from the audience, where they say, hey, I've tried this, it works for me. And then next thing you know, a couple shows later, we say, we really have grown to like what that comment or the person joining us said. So yeah, we switched. But here we are on Wednesday. I think we are deciding if there's going to be a show Friday. I mean, there could be. It is a holiday here in the United States, but I'm home anyway, so
same. And I'm actually, yeah, so cookouts later in the afternoon for me, so
yep.
If you so I'm up for doing a show if scheduled for you as well, so
stay tuned. We'll see, maybe we can post on YouTube if we are definitely going to do that. But in any case, a little past 9 here, a little longer than we usually go, so
I do want to bring this up. I think it's funny. I see how confused I can make Copilot AI. So I think if you didn't join us right at the beginning, Chris showed the MCP endpoint for the GitHub or the Learn documentation. Blazor is included in there because it's all part of what's under Learn. Be pointing to that, and this way it will search the documentation. You might have to prompt it a little bit and give it as part of your prompt. Hey, go check out the docs for the Blazor content, and then that should ground it, which is the important part you're trying to do. So definitely go check that out.
I'm interested to see, now that I've added that.
Okay.
I'm interested to see, does it change the kind of results I get? So in any case, I definitely want to thank everybody who joined us today, and thanks for leaving comments with us. It's great. Don't forget that you can always watch past shows at youtube.com/TheDevTalkShow. And we try to get them all of these morning shows into a morning hour playlist, which some I have to do a little bit later today. And then I usually like to go back and update the show notes with any links, things that we showed, just so that way, you don't have to copy them off of a screen. But got to get out of here. So I will we'll say goodbye. Rich, if there's nothing else,
we're good.
All right. So for Rich, I am Chris, and we will see you all next time on the Dev Talk Show.